President Donald Trump has just announced a ceasefire. This is a post that he put on Truth Social. He says, I'll just read part of this statement by the President of America. He says, congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now, when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their in-progress final missions for 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, an official end to the 12-day war will be saluted by the world. During each ceasefire, the other side will remain peaceful and respectful. He calls this the 12-day war has come to an end in the next 24 hours. Let's talk to Susan Teherani. She's our correspondent. She's now joining us from New York. Susan, welcome back. What's the latest on your end? I am sure there are so many reactions. Maybe you can tell us some of them.
Yes, reactions coming in. Of course, the White House, as anticipated, reposted and shared that post by President Donald Trump about the ceasefire and saying that, this is going to happen basically in the next few hours. I'm looking right now at reactions. The reactions that we're hearing right now are, of course, from Iranian officials. They say that terms of ceasefire proposed are being evaluated at this point. The Iranian officials also say Israel will get more time to strike if we agree to this. They're a little bit skeptical, but they also said a ceasefire can go into effect as early as 4 a.m. Tehran time, so they're acknowledging this. We're also hearing that here in the United States, as I mentioned, just before I came on, I heard from J.D. Vance. He said that President Trump, this was his aim. He was hoping to get through to the two sides, and apparently through intermediaries, through Iran, he did get through, and of course he's spoken with Israel as well. We're going to wait to hear from the Israeli side, but right now the mood, as we heard from Peter Kuznick as well, is one of jubilation and hope, to a certain extent, at least from the American side, because they believe that this really paves the way for, first of all, the United States not to get bogged down in another forever war in the Middle East. And second of all, they're hoping that, one way or the other, and it seems because of the assessments that we've been seeing, the damage assessments that the White House has been seeing, that Iran is not able to produce a nuclear weapon. Now, there was some talk about what happens to that uranium that, seemed to have been lost for the past 24 hours or so since America's attack. We're learning now new information regarding that it may be deep underground in Fordo. And because of that, that is why that Israel started to strike the roads around Fordo.
Right. And
second of all, we are learning that the possession of that uranium will be in America's possession. The United States will decide what to do with that uranium. Now, if all of these reportings are completely accurate and we're going to verify them, then that means that is probably why Donald Trump, after that meeting, said that this is a good time to put an end to this war, because at least from America's perspective, the United States has reached. It's a victory for America. You think about it, Eric, if Trump pulls back now, he's won. Anything more than this, Trump would have completely lost the American people. And listen, we got midterm elections coming up. We have this big, beautiful bill coming up. These were all on the line if this would have dragged on and American troops had to go in even one more time. Can I just tell you, we have a spokesperson for the Israeli military.
Go right ahead.
They just said that they have declined to comment on Trump's statement about a ceasefire. So that's according to the New York Times. As anticipated, it's one thing for President Trump to declare victory and, hope that all hostilities will ultimately go down between Israel and Iran, but it's another thing to have both sides really stop these attacks. Now, whether or not this 12-hour period, 24-hour period was something that maybe the United States and Israel discussed with one another, whether or not there's going to be more attacks. I mean, we are hearing that there are attacks right now going on the part of Israel against Iran as we speak.
Right.
Whether this is a time that Israel is buying, these are all questions that are left unanswered. But nonetheless, it appears that what we're getting is a sense of optimism right now here that maybe there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Light at the end of the tunnel. Let's ask that question to Chris Doyle, who's the Director of Council for Arab-British Understanding and the current lead spokesperson for the Council, who is now joining us live in London. Welcome to the program, Mr. Doyle. Light at the end of the tunnel. Do you actually think that this is the moment to say that?
Well, let's not count our chickens, but I think one can entertain a degree of optimism. I think that the American administration, the Trump administration, clearly did not want to get stuck into a long, protracted, forever war in Iran. I think the Israelis need an exit, an off-ramp, because they too do not really want to be doing this for week after week. It's expensive, it's costly. Obviously, there have been Iranian missile strikes that have hit Israel. They've killed civilians within Israel. And for the Iranians, in what way could they possibly prevail against both the United States and Israel, who are both militarily superior with far greater technical weaponry than Iran is able to possess? And I think for the rest of the world, very few countries did not want to see this end as quickly as possible. So, all in all, should this actually come to pass and we get to a ceasefire in, 5-6 hours' time, and then we can move to really serious, credible negotiations, then hopefully some of those worst-case scenarios we've been fearing for the last couple of weeks won't come to pass.
Mr. Doyle,
However,
let me ask you this before you make your next point. Talking about negotiations, because it looks like Iran is willing to de-escalate. It looks like Iran is willing to go to back to the negotiating table. But there's one problem, because we've received information that a spokesperson for the Israeli military has declined to comment on Trump's statement about a ceasefire. What does that signify or indicate?
I would be very careful about reading too much into that. I think this would be a decision taken at the level of the Israeli Prime Minister, the War Cabinet. They were meeting earlier on today, and I don't believe that Trump would have made that sort of statement unless he had had those sort of conversations with Netanyahu. If he went ahead without any consent from the Israeli leadership, then that would have been highly risky and risks embarrassment for the president, which he can ill afford. So I think that would be very unlikely. I think there is certainly a case that the Israelis would agree to this. They will have additional concerns. They'll have concerns as to where the enriched uranium is. Will it be put under some form of lock and key, taken away from Iran? Has it been destroyed, put beyond use? Who knows? They will want to also be reassured that none of these nuclear facilities is really capable of getting up and running again in any meaningful way, and that the negotiations are credible. But Iran will also want to demonstrate that it's not doing all of this from a complete position of weakness, that it will be able to go to the table not as some defeated party, but as a party that has stood its ground. It will be important in terms of its prestige. But whatever, the sentiments about it, people were talking about blockading the Straits of Hormuz, the potential attacks on tankers, all of these other issues that would have obviously been disastrous for the global economy, could have put us into a war that lasted, not weeks, but months. So let's just hope that nothing happens now that detracts from that. Israeli military operations are still, we understand, ongoing in Iran. And so as long as military operations are still continuing, there's always that risk that an operation could go spectacularly wrong and a lot of civilians get killed, and therefore compel the other side to take further action. So we're not out of the woods yet, but hopefully we're in a slightly brighter place.
Mr. Doyle, talking about hope, do you actually think that a resumption of talks between Iran and the United States will help things calm down in the future? Do you actually think the talks are feasible now?
Well, I think they are actually, because the logic of ending this war is the realization that they cannot continue like this. I think it's certainly Trump has continued to talk about this, to urge the Iranians to go back to the table, somewhat unfairly, given that it was Israeli airstrikes that actually terminated those talks. It wasn't the fault of the Iranians. Mm-hmm. So I think actually the US and Iran have a greater interest in getting into talks. The party that actually stopped these talks, Prime Minister Netanyahu, is the one over whom we have the most questions. Is he going to be willing to not disrupt these talks? Is he going to throw in the various hand grenades, demands that are going to be far too much for Iran to accept? Is he going to try to undermine them and set the bar far too high? That we do not know. But hopefully Netanyahu will also spot the opportunity to demonstrate that he can get an historic victory and bring this to an end, and that he will be able to argue that without these Israeli attacks, such a deal wouldn't have been able to happen. Whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. It's his ability to be able to argue that politically to his electorate and people.
Mr. Doyle, let's quickly talk about the regime of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, because it was reported that he was living in a bunker in fear of what could happen to him. He actually even chose two people to succeed him, and that was in the process. But now this news has come in. What do you think the future of Iran regime will look like under Khamenei in the coming future?
Well, that's going to be pretty difficult to determine. I mean, Iran will have to take stock of the losses that it's endured. Obviously, there's been some blows to the regime, but I don't think there's going to be, at this stage, a direct threat to the supreme leader himself, assuming all goes according to plan. Now, that's not to say, by the way, in any way that the Iranian regime is universally popular in Iran. Far from it. There's a lot of opposition to it. We've seen that in numerous protests over the last decade, even going back to as far as 2009 and the ones in 2022 and so forth. So there is, a lot of opposition to this regime, and there may be parties who decide that the regime, having lost a lot of its senior military and security figures, might be more vulnerable than it was before. But that remains to be seen, but it will become more of an issue for the Iranian people to determine what happens than external enemies and powers who don't put the interests of the Iranian people first and foremost. It'll become more of an internal Iranian agenda.
Mr. Doyle, stay with me. I'll just recap what has happened in the past 1 hour and to our viewers. Just stay with me for a little while. US President has made a major announcement. He has actually called for a ceasefire between Iran, Israel and the United States. He put out a post on social media, on Truth Social, and that's part of the statement. And I'll just read part of that statement. It begins with congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now, when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their in-progress final missions for 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, an official end to the 12-day war will be saluted by the world. During each ceasefire, the other side will remain peaceful and respectful, and Donald Trump is calling this an end of the 12-day war. Dr. Doyle, how should the world react at this moment, very quickly, as we wrap this up?
I think the world has got to build on this. All the major powers have got to get behind this to ensure it gets to a ceasefire, but then also not just secure that American, Israeli, Iranian ceasefire and deal, but also sort out the genocide in Gaza. That has to be stopped. We also have to stabilize Syria and actually end the Israeli attacks there and in Lebanon, and actually look at a bigger package of how to actually end the conflicts across the Middle East, because that is what will return the region to a degree of calm, hopefully security and prosperity.
Mm-hmm. Chris Doyle, as always, thank you very much for giving us time and for talking to WION World is One today. We'll have to leave it there.
Thank you.